story of power brokering, illegal activity, and a multi-million-dollar public asset nearly destroyed. 10 News investigative reporter Mike Deeson uncovered shenanigans going on at a powerful but little-watched government agency. And his investigation cost one top leader his job and saved a publicly owned building from the wrecking ball.
Welcome to the old Continental Airlines Reservation Center off Boy Scout Road in Tampa. In early January, it was almost demolished and wiped off the map as part of a secret deal that most members of the Aviation Authority had no clue about.
I'm surprised that as a board member, I don't know about it.
But Steve Burton, the newest member of the Aviation Authority Board, wasn't the only one who was surprised. Other members of the authority, including County Commission Chairman Ken Hagan, had no idea the building was slated to come down until we told them. Most board members were shocked. The $4,250,000 building, which was bringing in more than $400,000 a year in rent and paying $137,000 a year in property taxes, was about to be destroyed.
In this economic climate, I do have to question that.
The decision was cooked up by then Aviation Authority Director Lewis Miller and Board Chairman Al Austin. Miller defended tearing down the multi-million-dollar building, saying the airport planned to put a hangar on the property. However, the earliest that could happen was 10 years down the road, and Miller admitted it could be as much as 20 years before the property was needed. There's not an immediate need right now.
No, but we have to plan for the future, Mike.
Austin, who is a major developer in the West Shore area near the building, says it made perfect sense to tear it down. Austin says he's in the business, and he knows how hard it is to find tenants in the current economic climate. Miller agreed, appearing to be more concerned with competing with private developers than renting public assets.
It doesn't make sense for us to go out and try to compete with the private sector and lease facilities when you got a vacancy rate of 20%.
And while the Aviation Authority initially maintained that this building was in terrible disrepair, but there was no paperwork to substantiate that, that's only partially true. We pressed further with our public records request and found this document from a June inspection, which says our tour of the facility last month revealed a building that appears to be very well maintained and in need of very little capital expense in the immediate future.
So we just made the decision that that was the best thing for us to do.
But several board members were concerned the Aviation Authority was tearing down a valuable public asset. Miller, meanwhile, was reluctant at first to even acknowledge it was a public building. It doesn't cause you any concern taking down a $4 million building that is owned by the public.
It's not really. It's owned by the Aviation Authority. There's no tax
the Aviation Authority is a public
entity. You're right. No, it doesn't bother me because in the long term, that's what's the best interest for the airport.
But just before the wrecking ball was supposed to start, the Aviation Authority sent an email to board members saying the executive director, that's Lewis Miller, directed a hold on demolition because there was a company willing to invest its own funds for improvements to the Continental Center. The company, which was related to Moffitt Cancer Center, would pay the authority $600,000 a year for at least 10 years.
Were we too quick to try to take that building down?
It certainly appears that way.
And while Ken Hagan says he is delighted that there seems to be some interest in renting this multi-million-dollar public building instead of tearing it down, the head of County Commission doesn't have the same sentiments about the allegations that the Aviation Authority refused to show it to interested parties until now and seemed determined to destroy it.
If that's the case, yes, that would concern me a little bit.
Then Hagan should have been concerned. Meet Ted Leslie, the Aviation Authority Director of Property and Contracts.
We got a call in October, yes.
And why did the Aviation Authority not show it to him?
Because the building was scheduled to be torn down.
But that was last fall. By mid-January, the building was being shown. And Miller, who had been saying no one was interested, was then saying the problem was they wanted a lease for more than 10 years.
If you had showed the property in October when there was the initial interest, could you not have maybe negotiated a 10-year lease at that time?
Well, we could possibly, but we'd made the decision to tear it down.
And over 10 years, that would bring in $6 million in rent, $1.37 million in taxes, and save a $4 million building, an almost $12 million win for the public building that was slated to be destroyed. But Miller and Austin seemed determined to tear the building down, which made for a heated exchange at the next Aviation Authority meeting between Miller and board member Steve Burton, who was trying to slow the process down.
I'd ask if we could just hold off for the next 3.5 weeks before that building's torn down.
Burton wanted more analysis before the building was destroyed.
We will consider that, but I need to correct a couple of things you said. We did not increase Continental Airlines rent.
Let
me finish, please.
You say you consider it. Please tell me what that means.
Because I want to go through a couple of things that you just said that aren't accurate. We did not increase Continental's rent.
On that document you gave me, it said
We had done an appraisal that said it could have gone up, Mr. Burton. No.
You were very emphatic in that document you gave me.
But Burton was right. Before Continental left the area, Miller's document said the rent would increase to $669,000 from $464,000, more than a $200,000 difference. And while Miller was able to convince a majority of the board that no one was interested in renting this building, he does admit that when a major commercial real estate firm said they had a client that wanted to look at the building, which potentially could bring in $500,000 into the public coffers, the Aviation Authority refused to show it.
Well, if the Aviation Authority had already concluded that the cost to renovate would have been too much, then I can understand why they would do that.
But a staff report actually said the building was well maintained and didn't need capital improvements. But the board didn't buy the staff report, and Miller convinced them to go ahead with demolition. However, that changed after we made a public records request that showed Miller's dictatorial control of the airport had him illegally awarding contracts without holding public hearings as required by law and issuing illegal variances on his own. He abruptly resigned in March after facing increased pressure and scrutiny from the board, which he dominated during his 14 years as head of the airport.
It is clear that the proper review process has not been followed, and in fact that there were many variances that were not lawfully issued.
Tampa Mayor Pam Iorio, also a board member, has been one of Miller's strongest supporters, but she was talking about the illegal acts he committed, approving height variances for hundreds of projects over the years.
There was legal advice given, legal advice not followed, and a whole of the following of procedures.
Burton slammed Miller not only for breaking the law on height variances, but also for violating Florida's Sunshine Law in approving millions of dollars worth of projects without open meetings. Board member Dr. Joe Diaco was also highly critical of Miller.
But I was giving misinformation. I was lied to.
And when the board learned pending FAA approval, Moffitt Cancer Center will take over this old Continental building, bringing high-paying jobs and $8.3 million in rent revenue to the Aviation Authority, they chastised Miller again, saying he lied to them when he said no one was interested in this property and he was in the process of tearing it down.
When you get garbage in, you get garbage out. And too often we've been fed garbage or not enough information to form decisions.
And with Miller out of the way and more facts coming to light, the board did an about-face and negotiated a lease with Moffitt Cancer Center.
Oh, I see it as a great victory for the airport and for the community.
Board member Steve Burton, who was a driving force behind keeping the building a public asset, had one final parting shot for Miller, who lied about no one having an interest in the building, who wouldn't allow the authority to show it, and started the demolition, which decreased the value.
No question, that's a shame. That's the glass half empty. You're right. The glass half full is you got on it in time early enough, alerted us, and we were able to stop it.
But now, instead of losing a $4 million public asset, the building will bring in property taxes and rent for years to come. Mike Deeson, 10 News.
Moffitt Cancer Center signed a 20-year lease with the Aviation Authority, and that'll bring in more than $7.5 million in rent.
And the Aviation Authority is conducting a nationwide search for Miller's replacement. Well, coming up next, he is known for his tough talk and taking down the bad guys.
Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd talks about the job he loves and what drives him to protect and serve. That's next on 60 Minutes Tampa Bay.